Harry, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm alright, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Would you like to explain to our viewers a brief description about yourself, or what do you do?
In what context do you want me to describe?
If a random person, stranger, came up to you, they had no idea who you were, what would you say to them, to the best way to describe your life?
Okay. I am primarily a human. That's where it starts. I work a full-time job. I have a wife. I have a dog. I have a mortgage. I have a pretty normal, pretty standard life. And then outside of that, I chase a passion, which is grappling. And yeah, I'd say, I mean, look, that's probably a very, very high level description, yeah, of what makes me, I suppose.
Do you think you're underselling yourself a tiny bit in a way?
I mean, I think the question is broad.
Yes,
right? So,
of course.
So it's difficult to extrapolate out a good answer from that. But like, yeah, we talked off air. I'll break the fourth wall immediately.
Yes.
We were talking about how we name the podcast, right? What do we name this episode of the podcast? And I think that will probably come out as the episode goes, because I find I am somebody that I've done lots of things, but there's always sort of been a through line for all of them. And then where we are now, sort of the passion that I've defined now, the things that I do to support the passion that I have are all quite consistent. But like, am I underselling myself? Probably not. Maybe. It depends who you ask, you know?
Yeah. There's always like interesting, because usually whenever we ask that question, people go into a whole spiel of saying, oh, I do this, and it's all very like career focused in a way. And it's just like so human just to hear you just say, oh, I have a mortgage, I have a wife, I have a dog. So it's always like really lovely to kind of like hear that kind of balance. And I think kind of doing, I guess jumping straight into it in a way, doing some research and stuff. I think I read about balance grappling.
Yeah.
And kind of like the whole philosophy about the idea of balance in a way. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about balance grappling?
Yeah, so the idea started when I was young. At least the awareness to the concept of balance started when I was young. When I was about 12, probably 13, where I grew up, which was a small town just outside of Birmingham, a little place called Telford. I noticed that a lot of the people around me, specifically younger children, like people my age, right, didn't really discuss their lives outside of sort of the superficial layers. But the town was quite poor, and so people's lives were generally pretty tough. And I tried to cultivate this, at least in my head, right? It never actually happened. But the idea I had was that people could talk to each other. It was basically group therapy, right? That's effectively what it was. But at 12, I did not know how to define that. And the only place I could think to host it was a pub. And like, I'm not sure, as I say, never, ever materialized. But like, I'm not sure a pub owner in Telford would have been happy with like 15 or 16, 12-year-olds running about the place. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, funnily enough, never materialised. Anyway, when I moved to London and I started training, I'd kickboxed for a long time as a child. And then when I came to London, I had an idea of starting MMA. And then I started training MMA, remembered what it was like to get concussions and decided to stop MMA, but had fallen in love with grappling early.
When did you start kickboxing, sorry?
Oh, fuck, I don't know. Maybe I was 9 or 10, something like that.
Wow.
And then I stopped when I was 17.
Yeah. How did you get into it? Because I feel like it's the type of thing, I know especially for my parents, it's like if I say I did kickboxing when I was 9 years old, or I'm interested in it, they'll say like absolutely not.
That's true. Basically, Telford was a pretty violent place. And I had gotten bullied a lot as a child, and there was one specific instance where I took quite a hiding, and my mum was like, you need to learn how to fight. And so I learned how to fight. So that's really where it came from.
So it stems from personal experience.
Yeah.
That's, I think, most of the time, like, where fighters are built, like something happened in their life.
Oh,
And I think
I'm
that's
not a
really
fighter.
powerful.
I'm not a fighter.
Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think
Why you're not a fighter?
one is that I've been in enough, let's call them altercations, as a younger person, that you realize very quickly that they are very silly and very dangerous.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, a lot of them were just fist fights. And then as I grew older, into my sort of middle teens, specifically my school had a rivalry with a local school. And we would organise to meet up and have scraps. But they started turning into people would bring baseball bats and javelins and this and that and the next thing.
Like actual javelins?
Yeah, they'd raid the PE cupboard and Telford was a violent place, I'm telling you.
Wow.
And so they got pretty hectic pretty quickly. And I was like, oh, this seems a bit silly. Like this isn't what it was. And then as I got into, just before I left Telford, knives began to appear. And then it's like, well, what are we doing now? This is really silly. So I also think, like, to me anyway, there are, if we take it to grappling or kickboxing or whatever, you can generally identify people in sort of three ways. There's an athlete, there's a fighter, and then there's somebody that's like more of a martial artist, right? And I say that in inverted commas for the people that are just listening. I think for me, I'm certainly not an athlete. And I think the fighter is somebody that is pursuing the sport or the endeavor through attempting to cleanse some level of personal trauma. The martial artist is generally somebody that's seeking the art elements of the sport. And then an athlete is just somebody who's an excellent athlete, right? Like you look at a lot of high school wrestlers and stuff, NFL players, basketball players, they're all incredible athletes. Whereas I think the combat sports more generally, it's more akin to finding fighters and martial artists. But yeah.
Would you not say there's some kind of overlap between those three categories?
Always, yeah. There's definitely a Venn diagram of them, but predominantly you're going to find that the ratio for one person sits far, far larger in one element than the other. But you'll have elements of all of it for sure.
And which one would you say that you align with the best, if that makes sense? Which part of the Venn diagram are you in?
I mean, I think maybe when I was younger, I was more of a fighter than I was anything else. But as I've grown older and sort of left that element of my life as far behind as possible, I probably align more with the martial artist, but I also don't really identify with that either. But if I had to pick one of the Venn diagram, I would pick that, yeah. With sprinkles of a fighter. There's no athlete in me, for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. I think there's an MMA gym I went to over the summer, and then I remember the coach saying there's two types of people. Well, you said three, but they say there's two types of people. There's a fighter and then there's a hobbyist.
Sure.
And they're saying like the fighter doesn't get paid.
Yeah.
In a way, because it's a type of thing. It's, yeah, sure, it's, as you say, it's like have a lot of trauma and stuff, and it's to do with personal experience, but it's a type of thing that, do you think they can pursue it too far in a way that it's not actually what they want?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we go back to the concept of balance, right?
Yeah.
I think if you chase something blindly, or you chase something with an unhealthy level of delusion, then the likelihood of you finding what it is or allowing yourself to exercise the demons that pursued you to get into that position, yeah, you're not gonna get to where you want to go, right? But to bring it back to your question about where Balance Grappling started was, so I fell in love with grappling when I got to London, to shoot fighters. And then when lockdown hit, I started a podcast, and that was called All About Balance. And the idea being that I felt as though long form conversation was dying, and that it was being replaced by memes and
short form content,
right? The attention span of the global populace was diminishing, and I wanted to do my best to put a stake in the ground and show that there was still value in long form conversation. So I ran that for a while, and then eventually an Irish MMA media outlet called Severe MMA got in touch and asked me if I wanted to go and work for them, and that was a that was a brand, still is a brand, still is an outlet that I deeply respect, and so I jumped at the chance of that. But
Was that the type of thing where they saw your podcast and then they reached out?
so the podcast itself, the aim of All About Balance was to interview interesting people and just have a conversation with them.
We're looking at each other because we have the same like.
Shout out, we are the Spider-Man meme now. But yeah, I interviewed the guy that runs Severe MMA, and then eventually, like, I'd followed MMA as a fan. I'd watched it as a fan for a long time, and then a couple of friends of mine, we were like, well, we talk about mixed martial arts all the time. We talk about fights. Why don't we just record a podcast about it? So we started that, and then one of the boys had kids, and so that like his ability to do the podcast diminished, and then another one went off to uni, so his ability diminished, and so I replaced one of the boys with somebody that eventually went to work for Sphere MMA. So there was connections there that happened organically, and I think there was an opening for an analyst sort of a role within the Sphere MMA team, and Sean Sheehan, the guy that runs Sphere MMA, I'd interviewed him on the podcast before, and we'd sort of had an acquaintance that then turned into a friendship.
Your podcast, was it in person and kind of with the same people, or did you bring in guests on?
So it was always guests, and then eventually there were some episodes in person. One of the struggles I had with the podcast is I in lockdown you interview your mates, right? And most of my mates were grapplers, and so there became this sort of stereotype that, or like a I can't think of the word, like a people had an idea that the podcast was purely about grappling, and the intention was not that. And then as I began to branch out, and I had the head of history at Texas University, he came on. I had some politicians, I've had doctors, osteopaths, I've had all sorts of people come on. It became more difficult as lockdown wore on to get people's time, to have people to be willing to talk openly about whatever. And then on top of that, all of the editing and everything that went into it was just too much. And then the officers for Severe MMA came in. Anyway, All About Balance sort of went away, although it's still available on YouTube if people want to go and look at it. Tiny plug.
Yeah,
Tiny.
I think I seen like a few, but
Yeah.
I forgot which one it was. I was just really interested in because we messaged before, and I messaged you about this podcast.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised to kind of hear that you used to run a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what you said about kind of like long form content in a way. I feel like a lot of podcasts nowadays is designed to capture people's attention.
Yeah, I think we're in an age, and like with balance now, and I'm beginning to delve into the marketing elements of it, you realize that the more you study YouTube shorts, Instagram shorts, things like TikTok, there is a very specific nature with which the algorithm is expecting your content to look like. Now, the thing for me that, and again, just to harp on the concept of balance, is like I am attempting to derive what, like, the middle ground between them. So obviously, if you go on Instagram and you try and do something super artistic, but it has no attention grabbing nature whatsoever, the algorithm will not pick it up, and it will not perform anywhere near as well as maybe you believe it should. However, if you go all the way to the other side, I think you often lose authenticity and it starts to become disingenuous. So for me, and just one of the core tenets of the brand is going to be that authenticity is like super key. So when I let go of All About Balance, I thought about just putting a logo on some gis, putting a logo on some rash guards, and seeing what happened. But the idea was nowhere near as formulated as it is now. It was just, I had
an idea almost.
Yeah, I had like a spark of an idea, and I tried to execute it way too quickly, way too fervently, and it just didn't go anywhere. Now, the idea of balance grappling, the concept of balance, sort of finding the line between chaos and order, is something that's been apparent in my life. Like you'll know, you've seen them. I have the words chaos and order tattooed on my thighs. That's like, that has been a through line throughout my entire life. And then 2023, me and my wife had gotten into a habit of like setting yearly goals, and we would talk on New Year's Eve. We'd talk about the goals that we'd set for each other.
Oh, that's quite healthy.
Yeah. So 2023, I set myself a goal of being sponsored. So in 2024, I wanted to be sponsored.
Yeah.
And then I was like competing and doing stuff and whatever. And I was like, I don't even fucking want to wear this stuff. Like, one, I don't want to wear this stuff, and two, it feels disingenuous to be like, look at me, like, please come and give me the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I just said to my wife one day, I was like, I'm just gonna fucking sponsor myself. Like, this is dumb. Like,
That's a power move.
Yeah, why don't I just sponsor myself? You know. So really, it all came from me feeling like there was a gap in the market for something that felt authentic to my view of what grappling is.
Yeah. What does that look like to sponsor yourself?
Well, at the minute, non-existent because the kit's not here. But what it will look like is mid 2023, I opened a business account. I registered a limited company called Balance Grappling Limited, and every bit of money that I earned from grappling, whether that's coaching KCL, whether that's teaching privates, whether that's covering classes at London Grapple, whether that's the 5 seminars I did last year, whether that's any seminars I do this year, all of that money goes into the business account, right? Now, there's a philosophical idea there, which is this thing is my passion, right? But there is every possibility that it fails.
Yeah.
Now, I am the main breadwinner in my household, and I need to ensure, or at least I committed to my marriage, that I will ensure that any funds that goes towards my passion won't affect the household, right? So any money that I earn from my day job, that goes to the mortgage, to put food on the table, to feed the dog, whatever it is, right? Any money that is from my passion can go into Balance Grappling, so much so that, let's say the brand starts and it has a successful 6 months, and then it just implodes, my family's not affected. So
it's like that safety net.
Well, it's balance, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what does it look like, or what it will look like, is when I competed on some invitational shows last year, the brand paid for a train ticket, it paid for a hotel, it paid for whatever.
As part of the business, right? Like, it goes in the business expenses.
Yeah, exactly. So now some kit is on its way, and I will take some of that kit and I will wear it. And at the moment, that will be kind of what the sponsorship is. But I'll take a slight tangent into what I think sponsorship should look like, or at least what it will look like for Balance Grappling, at least right now. So let's say I wanted to sponsor you. That's Reese for the people that we'd sit down at the start of the year and we'd say, okay, what do you want to do this year? Right? Let's say you say, okay, well, I want to do 3 grappling industries and I want to do 1 major. I say, okay, well, a grappling industries is £70 an entrance. It's a train ticket. It's a whatever.
For the people that are listening, can you tell us a bit what grappling industries is?
Sure.
Really
So when it comes to grappling tournaments, there are like tiers of grappling tournaments. Grappling industries is just a locally run, very well run, but a locally run tournament that has events all over the country, all over the world, mostly in the US and the UK and in Europe. And then when I say the majors, by the majors, I generally mean ADCC Trials, which is an organisation that hosts a grappling event under its own rule set. And then the IBJJF, which again is another federation, another organisation that hosts its own events under its own rule set. So the majors are generally termed either IBJJFs or ADCCs. So yeah, if you said you wanted to do a major, then we'd sit down and we'd say, okay, the rough cost of that is going to be this. The brand can offer you X amount of money. And then generally how lots and lots of brands do things is they will say, okay, I'm going to give you a discount code. and that code is Reese10, whatever. And you go out and on all of your social platforms and friends and this and that, you promote that code, and the people that follow you, your fans, your audience, your friends, whatever, they have an ability to use that code in order to purchase product.
And you get paid off that.
Yeah, so you will take at the moment, very small, but you will take a cut of that, right? Yeah. Now, the reason why I don't like that model is I think everyone loses.
Okay.
So for me as a brand, I've put X amount of time, money, effort into developing a product that I'm really proud of, that the brand, I feel like it represents the brand's core values really well. I go out now to all my customers and I say, it's worthy of a discount. I think that's a failure.
So it's almost being authentic to your values, like true to your values. And if the brand's not that you're promoting is not representing that, then you think it's not a good fit, right?
I more think that if I've put this amount of effort in, why should I discount the product? Because that's then discounting my ideas, that's then discounting my time, that's then discounting my effort. I don't think that's worth it. On the other side, you're saying the reason why you're sponsoring an athlete is because you believe in the athlete's ability and or you believe in the athlete's story. So when it comes to discount codes, people don't really care for the athlete. They care for their discount code. So you're not promoting the athlete at all, really. You're promoting an ability for the athlete to be a proxy for a discount code on products. So I think that's a fail for the athlete as well. And then for the customer, you are showing and giving the customer an ability to feel like what they are worth is to only interact with the brand at a discounted price.
We had someone on a podcast earlier. I was going to say earlier on this year, but 2025. We had someone on a podcast last year, and they were basically saying if you rely on marketing tactics, if you rely on capturing people's attention, or as you said, giving discount codes, then it's not that people, as you said, are buying it because they actually like the product.
Right.
It's because of the short form content that makes someone feel a certain way, and it's a type of thing. It's like it's not satisfying to buy a product and then you realize this isn't actually what I want.
Right. So I'm going to say this word a lot. So there's a balance to be found, right? And what I mean by that is, I think that you have to sell your brand, you have to market your brand, you have to show what your brand is, and one of a really, really good way to do that is short form content, right? It is Instagram, it is TikTok, it is YouTube Shorts, it is whatever. But the thing, in my opinion, and this is yet to be tested, but in my opinion, the thing that garners longevity is when you build a community around a brand. Look at Apple, right? Look at Nike, look at Adidas. Why do people buy an Apple product? It's because there is a feeling you get. There is a sense of community you get. There's a sense of allegiance you get when you buy an Apple product, right? There's a customer service element to it. There's the unboxing element to it. There's the whole thing. But people feel very strongly about owning an Apple product versus owning, say, an Android product or whatever. It's the same thing with Nike. Why did people buy Nike? Because they wanted to be Michael Jordan, right? That's the answer. And now, in the modern era, they want to be insert athlete that now has a Nike collaboration, right? So I think if the values of the brand are something that are synonymous with a group of people, and you promote that in a way that feels authentic to the brand, that's how you build longevity in customers, rather than discount codes. So what I would do is we go back to Reese's goals for the year, which is a couple of grappling industries and a major. I say, okay, I'm going to give you a code and it's going to say Reese 10, right? Every sale that you make or that somebody uses under Reese 10, you get 10% of that sale. No discounts, but you get 10% of that sale. So if a rash guard is 40 quid, you get £4. Now, what does that do? That, for me, as a brand, is an incentive because I don't have to discount my products. I don't have to say to people they're worthy of a discount.
Yeah.
You, as the athlete, you get real cash. All you have to make is 100 sales, 50 sales, right? So it incentivizes you to go out on your own and interface with your community and grow your community, because you're going to, in return, get a real investment from that. And on the other side, people are going to, because they know that you're seeing real cash, you will find out who's invested in your story and who's not. So then there's authenticity to your community, and so you're spreading by proxy the brand's values, right? So that's my idea. Yeah. Now, underneath that, there will be community outreach from the brand. So the first drop is based around the 4 seasons. When whatever profits we get from that, a percentage of profits will go to, it's not yet defined, I haven't yet quite nailed the idea because the idea of seasons are so vast, but there will be some form of donation to some form of charity. I'm not 100% sure yet, but like some of the other ideas I have are centered around food or flowers. So let's say we do food, the brand makes £1,000, let's say. Well, let's just pick an arbitrary figure, 5%, 10%, that goes to a local food bank. Maybe there's a podcast with the person that runs that food bank. There's some content that's created in a way that is tasteful to begin with, but secondarily that promotes that food bank, that promotes that community. And so you start to show, because one of the core ethos, or one of the core elements of the ethos of Balance Grappling is that a lot of the brands right now, they are based around the stuff that happens on the mat. And that's fine, but to me, that's not grappling at all. Grappling is everything outside of that. Like I said at the start, you asked me what my definition was. Before grappling, I mentioned that I have a full-time job, and I'm a husband, and I have a wife, and I have a dog, and I have a mortgage, and whatever.
There's so much more to grappling.
Right. There's everything else that happens outside of the mat, you interface with grappling, and that's the balance, right? So, yeah. A lot of the ideas are going to be centered around showing both the stuff that happens on the mat, right? Obviously, but there's way more to the people that train, the people that pursue this sport, than just the shit that happens on the mat.
That's amazing. Like that just, I don't know how long that was you were speaking, but there was honestly like a business masterclass right there.
Oh, don't do that.
No, genuinely, because it's lovely to see how your mind's working, because you weren't just thinking, for example, the sponsorship example you took, you weren't just thinking about the person who's getting paid. You think about the brand, you think about all sides of the thing. Your mind's almost working like a map. And like you're saying with grappling as well, you're not just thinking about the grappling, it's about all the different effects. You said the food bank, right? Think about the content as well. Where did you get that kind of mindset from? Almost like a business mindset. Think about all the different factors involved.
It's not a business mindset at all. I'm horrendous at business. So a guy one of the owners of London Grapple, his name is Aidan Woodhouse. He and I have been talking a lot recently, and he's started to help shape my mind into what I think is more of a business-led mindset. But to me, there are 2 ways that you can do business. One is community-based and the other is capitalist-based. Now, there's a balance to be found between both, right? But to me, community-based business is where you garner value before profit. You provide value before profit. Now, that's not to say you don't make profit. That's dumb, yeah? You have to make money, otherwise the business ceases to exist. But for me, I would much prefer that. So let's say in a couple of weeks when the kit gets here, we're going to start filming an advert, right? The advert is 2 videographers that are both grapplers and are both in the scene. Uniformity, as we talked about before, is important, but to me, the thing that is more important is a uniformity of a value. So I'm going to bring in loads of different videographers, photographers that are in the scene and out of the scene to make this community grow. Everyone eats is like one of the things I like to see, right? So let's say, should I name drop? Should I? So one of the KCL team came to me and they're studying some copywriting stuff at the
Okay.
moment, right? And they said, would you be interested in working with me to, like, for the website, let's say, or some marketing emails or whatever? And the answer is yes, because they are part of the community, they are part of the culture, and I feel as though if we can extrapolate out the community and you can get everyone involved, then that leads to profit over time, rather than just I pursue direct profit over community. So how did I get to that mindset? Just lived in it. Like I feel as though you get naturally, as you progress through this life, you get naturally to a point when you realize that there is inherent value in the self, but if you combine a bunch of people together, you can do really, really, really cool things. Now with the brand, for me, it is without a shadow of a doubt my brand, mine and my wife's, but my brand, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say somebody comes in and says, oh, let me give you 10 grand of investment. I don't want it. And I don't want it because you came with the idea of putting money in. Mm-hmm. That's not like, I can make money, right? I could go and teach PTs for the next month and raise X amount of cash and invest that in the brand if I need to. Money is not the problem. Mm-hmm. It is a problem, but it's not the main problem, right? Like, the problem is, how do we push the brand? How do we push the values of the brand? And so I care much more about guiding that than I do anything else. And like, I'll just say this as a final, and then feel free to jump in, is it's like, I've had to early separate me from the brand. The brand now is its own idea. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's been birthed from my brain, but I have an analogy or like a philosophy that every interaction you have with somebody, however long that interaction is, like, let's say you meet someone on the street today, mm-hmm. that's an interaction. But your relationship with your mum or dad, that's an interaction. It's just one's way deeper than the other. Mm-hmm. When you either tangibly move away from that person, or that person dies, or whatever it is, you take and have taken part of that person with you, and by proxy they've taken a part of you with them, right? So I feel like, to that end, the idea, that brand philosophy is not really mine. It's just the summation of many interactions that I've had, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel as though, and maybe we're getting too philosophical here, but like, I feel as though in some part that all of us are just in part a summation of all the interactions that we've had. And so the brand sort of has to live outside of me. Yeah.
That was amazing. That was honestly amazing. You said it was going to get too philosophical. It wasn't. I think it's actually quite perfect. And I was actually having a very similar conversation with one of my friends about 2 weeks back. And it was almost like that transfer of essence, like you were saying. You take something from someone, they take something from you, mm-hmm. but you relate it to the brand. And that's what we didn't discuss, actually. Mm. And I think that's very, very interesting. I hugely respect it. And so you were talking about two kind of business approaches almost. There was the community base and the capitalist base, right?
Yeah.
So you said you wanted to focus on the community base with your brand because...
Well, find the balance between them, but lean more towards the community base. Yeah,
because
for sure.
The ROI on that is better in the long term.
Yeah.
Would you say, you also mentioned Apple way back before, would you say they started with a community-based approach?
It's hard to know. Because Steve Jobs was a madman.
He was. He really
but
was.
I think that something that he had was a vision that he felt just had to get out.
Yeah.
It was a vision that he could not hold in. It was a vision that he saw no way to deliver other than just by giving himself to that vision.
He couldn't ignore it.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though, from what I've heard, Apple was a very difficult place to work when he was CEO, mm-hmm. but what they produced was something very, very special. Now, do I think that that's the best way to run a company? I don't know. Am I looking to run Balance Grappling the same way? No. But there is, you know, me and my wife have had, we'll call them heated debates about certain execution points in the brand. And if she was here, she'd tell you that arguing with me is difficult. But
He's usually the one that's right.
huh?
He's usually the one that's right.
Right doesn't matter. It's who wins.
Oh, okay.
But I don't compromise on the brand.
Okay.
In real life, I'm super open to loads and loads of different ideas, but the brand, I have the vision and I'm going to execute it. And so
what's the bits that you don't compromise?
all of it.
All of it.
The whole brand, because it's almost like your baby.
So I think it's more just that I have a vision of what it can be. And then when I release it, it feels a little bit, right? If we make an analogy to music. So a debut album of a band is like their heart and soul. Now, when they release it, people interpret that music maybe completely differently to how the band intended it, right? So the artist has got this idea and they write the lyrics and they write the melodies and they write the hooks and they write the riffs and all this stuff. And to them, it means X. The person consuming it, it means Z. And they're like, but you have to be able to detach from that thing, right? The brand will live on its own unto itself. People interface with it on their own unto themselves. However, when I place something out via the brand, it's going to be what I want. So when I was designing the first drop, I probably sent my wife 2,000 colorways maybe. And she would go through, and sometimes I just didn't get a response. And I'd be like, okay, that's a no. Sometimes it would just be no. Sometimes it would be, that's awful. And then some that like, that's okay.
And 2,000 times that she had to.
So I would send batches.
Oh, okay.
And then, or I'd get her to come over and review like this fucking massive screen of just colorways. And eventually I got to the point where I found the 4 I wanted. And I sent them and she was like, I love that one. I wouldn't wear that one. That's okay. Don't know about that one. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck. They're my 4. Right? And like the way my wife is the head of the horrible bastard department at Balance Grappling, meaning if it gets through that department, we're good to go. Right? Like we're probably good to go. But in the same vein, the execution of what I'm going to do from an advert perspective, from a packaging perspective, from this, that, the next thing, like I have an idea that the unboxing experience has to be something. Right now, one of the things I don't like about brands is you get a cellophane bag with a rash guard in it. They basically fling it to you in the post. You unwrap it and you're like, cool, that's what I bought. Right, it is the rash guard item that I bought, or the shorts, or the this, or the whatever, but it's soulless. Right? There's nothing there.
Yeah, right? It's in a plastic bag. It's all in the bottom half.
Right. And again, if I go back to Apple, you buy an Apple product, it's an experience unwrapping it. It's an experience unboxing it. You can feel and see the technical detail that they have put together in a box. And you're like, yeah, that's dope. Right? So whilst I don't have the funds right now to replicate an Apple style experience for a rash guard and shorts, I have tried to do something that feels more special. And one of the heated debates myself and my wife had is that the boxes, so I had a custom box made to house the rash guards and shorts, right? And when I was looking to bulk buy, my wife said, oh yeah, those boxes are cool. How much are they? And then I told her, and she was like, no. And I was like, I've already ordered them.
No compromises made.
Yeah, and she was like, but this is silly. Like, you've not even sold anything. You've not even done this. And I was like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
This is the vision, and this is what's getting executed. And if it fails, it fails. Because my family they're not affected, you know. Financially, they're not affected.
Yeah,
it's just my ego that's affected.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense. So you see, whenever you are, let's say you have, so you're working with someone else, right? And then,
In what context?
so let's say, similar to you and your wife
Okay, but for the brand, or do you mean in real life?
in real life.
Oh, okay, yeah, fine,
in real
fine,
life.
fine.
Do you think it's always better to have that one person that is that major decision maker, or do you think there's a way for two people to come to a compromise?
Both can be true.
Okay.
I think it's entirely situational based, right? Like, let's take my job, right?
Yeah.
In my job, the hierarchy that is defined means I make certain decisions, and some of those decisions I'll go to my boss and say, "What do you reckon?" And he'll say, "Yeah" or "No,"
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm inherently pretty detached from that process. But if I'm working directly with somebody, let's say me and my wife are looking to buy a house, move out from the flat and buy a house, like that is inherently a dramatic amount of compromise.
Yeah.
Because we have different styles, we want different things, we have different personal requirements for what we want from that house. And so it's okay, like, I want a hot tub, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
And my wife's like, no, I want a kitchen. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. I guess a kitchen is more important. And so it's it's all finding, and I'm going to say it again, it's all finding the balance of what are your requirements, what are the future requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, compromise is inherently vastly important to any dynamic, but not my brand.
Yeah. No, it's like, I think you have mentioned balance quite a few times, but I feel like we haven't fully, at least for me and Yash, we haven't fully understood what that actually means to you. As in, do you think there is such a thing as like complete balance? Or do you think it's just the type of thing where you keep on going either side of it?
So I think it's an ideal for you to aim for. So Carl Jung has a line about through every man is a fine line between good and evil, right? And it's how you tread that line that allows you to be good or not in the world, right? And so to me, balance is the line between chaos and order. Like, chaos exists, order exists. It is not healthy to allow yourself to drift too far one way or the other, but life is going to pull you that way. I'll give an example. When I'm 19, 17, some teen, whatever, I get a call at work. My mother says, your grandmother's been rushed to hospital. Chaos. But how do you react to that thing, right? Well, how you react is I go to my boss and I'm like, I'm going now, bye. And I get in the car and I drive and we drive to Wales and we see my nan and blah, 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 blah. So you try to find a semblance of order in the midst of what is chaos, right? In the same vein, if you feel life is too monotone, your routine is too stringent, too much order. So you try and find some chaos. You try and find a balance. Like, I think that to me, it is attempting as much as possible to find a stasis that allows you to not be drawn by one or the other too dramatically. Because you are going to get pulled whether you like it or not, right? The tube's late, fuck, chaos, right? So what's the order? You just wait for another train, you know? Or you make sure you leave 5 minutes earlier so there's room for another train.
It sounds very similar to, I think it's what Jordan Peterson says. Like, chaos and order.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yes, we're getting there. I think one of the things he mentioned for young people, and I want to know, because obviously he's can be quite controversial at times,
Especially now,
is that I think he suggests young people to go to one extreme to find out the limits of that, to be able to find that kind of balance in a way. Is that something you agree with?
I think life's going to do it for you. I don't think you have to go pursuing it, to be honest. You know, like, I think whether you like it or not, life is going to find chaos and order in for you. I think if we can teach younger people to find the tools to recognize when chaos is coming early and find a semblance of order in that, great. If not, when chaos comes, teaching some abilities to navigate their way out of that chaos, or at least a couple of steps removed from that, some abstraction layers away from that chaos, because it's not healthy to live, as I say, in either one. It's just not.
You've talked a lot about balance. You've talked a lot about your brand, and I love that your whole life is almost surrounded by this one big philosophical meaning behind your life, which is the balance, which almost you've learned through your life, your experiences, whatever it might be, and you've almost created your passion around that, which is really like your whole brand around the fundamental concept of balance. I love that, honestly, and I think a lot of people try to find that through life.
Maybe.
But then would you say you just found that naturally?
No. I mean, what does naturally mean?
I mean, like through life's experiences.
Maybe. So I don't know that I would classify myself as like quote unquote religious, right? But I have a theory, let's call it a theory. And that is that throughout humanity, there is an unconscious understanding of what leading a positive life looks like and what leading a negative life looks like. I used to determine it by something called the pantheon of knowledge, but I think that's just a little bit too crazy. So I've sort of disbanded with that wording for now, and we can get there if you wish. But I feel like most people understand what living a good life feels like and what living a good life or what a bad life feels like. So, and I think life will guide you in that. If you are walking or attempting to walk the steps of a quote unquote good life, life will reward you. If you are walking or finding yourself walking the steps of a bad life, life will not necessarily punish you, but will give you warnings to say that this thing you are doing or these things that you are doing are not they're not nourishing you the way that you could. I'll give an example. I won't name any names, but I'll give an example. So in a job I worked previously, I had a friend who began a relationship with a girl. She was very smart, very talented, very, very talented, lots and lots of potential in her job. But she had not allowed herself to accept maybe some of her past experiences and deal with those past experiences, and she was allowing those to navigate her through her life. Right? So when he first met her, there would be just some grumblings of an argument. It's like a little ripple in the wave of life warning, like something's going wrong here, right? And then slowly, they began to increase in their severity. So much so, we went out one night, group of us, she was there, got too drunk, starts fighting with a bouncer. She's like 5'2", right? This is not a fight she should be starting. Fights with the bouncer's holding an iPad, she launches the iPad into the River Thames, a whole madness occurs, right? Whole madness occurs. And it's like, what are we doing here, right? Like if that isn't something. And then eventually there was an incident that occurred where she had wanted to go and buy some narcotics from another human and had ended up being effectively kidnapped in a house for a while
Oh, wow.
And then my friend had to go and deposit a significant amount of money so that she would be allowed out of the house, right? And so eventually life is going to stagger the events with which you are presented with in order to say, maybe some change is needed, right? Maybe we can find some semblance of order in this thing. And thankfully, I think for the most part now, this was many years ago, but now I hope she's in a better position. But I feel as though life will put things in your way to try to slow down the negativity.
I see. And do you think it goes the other way as well?
100%.
As in, if, let's say, you're doing way too much, then there are signs that life is trying to stop you from doing that.
100%. So I'll give you my last year, 2024, as an example. So I was attempting to work a full-time job at a FTSE 100 company. I was attempting to retire my wife. I was attempting to hold down a household. I was attempting to start a brand, teach at 2 different academies.
Sorry, was this last year or
2024? This was 2024. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was attempting to compete every month, train 6 times, 7 times a week. I was attempting to continue to do the MMA stuff, build the brand, see my friends, see my family. I was attempting to have my own personal time. I wanted to, then find the time I wanted to develop the new musical interests I had. I wanted to play games. There's a stack of books I wanted to read. I wanted to strength and conditioning, you name it. You name it. Right?
Yeah.
It was a little too much.
Just a little.
Right. And so what happened was I got injured pretty significantly near the end of the year. Burnout set in, etc., etc. And the things that I was attempting to achieve did not progress in any way, shape or form the way I wanted them to. And it's because I was trying to do too much. So like one of the goals me and my wife made this year is that I do 3 things. Solid. If it improves my marriage, we'll do it. If it improves my grappling, that includes the brand, I'll do it. If it furthers my career, my actual 9-to-5 career, then I'll do it. But outside of that, forget it. So we're in early January, and the brand has taken significant strides. There are some interesting matches, competition-wise, potentially coming up. Imi is good. That's my wife. Imi is good. Dog's okay. We're doing all right, right? But I have a tendency to take as much on as possible because to me, and this is the hypocrisy of the balance thing, is I feel like because life is so short that if you don't try and push the boundaries at any given point and try and do the absolute maximal that you can, then you may regret it later on. And I really don't want to be in a position where I'm 60, 70, 80, whatever age I get to, and I think, oh, fuck, I could have done more.
Yeah. I think it's the type of thing is like a lot of people, like let's say Tiger Woods, for example.
Sure.
It's like his childhood
example.
childhood was quite rough in a way, and it was very much about over-optimization to become the best, to become pro. And it's the type of thing that, yes, you did get there at the very end, but there's so much sacrifice along the way.
Right.
And I feel like that can come very easily for a lot of people in terms of like, you see that end result, you want to retire your wife, you want to grow this really big company, but then it's like once you actually get there, it's
different.
Yeah, it's like what have I achieved in a way?
I think that in part that's one of the reasons why purpose or a lack of purpose is so crippling for people. I just want to just change slightly the sentence you said there. Like you said, I want to grow a really big business. I don't necessarily. Balance Grappling eventually is going to turn into a gym. That's the end goal. Right? The end goal is Balance Grappling will be a gym, and I will run that gym and I will teach. That's actually my passion. That's actually the goal. So the brand right now is one, to try and raise some funds for an eventual gym. A gym is a significant investment.
Yeah.
We're talking minimum 30k to get a gym together. So that's just not money I have in my back pocket. So unfortunately, but hopefully via the vehicle of the brand, we can get somewhere close to that money that I can then start to parlay into a gym. It's also, the gym is a way for me to tangibly pass on the actual grappling elements that I'm aware of, but also the community elements that I'm aware of. And I can start to form a room, or help to form a room, similar to how KCL was last year. I was technically the leader of that room because I came in and I taught stuff and I was roughly an authority in that room. But the community manifested naturally and organically.
Yeah.
People became friends, socials happened naturally, and things just worked super well, right? I didn't really have to direct too much. You know, every now and again when there was a hole in the wall, you bring people back from the lines of chaos. And you try and infiltrate a little bit of order. But I recognized early that they're uni students. Right? There is going to inherently be a level of chaos. This is, for some of them, the first freedoms they've ever had. So you have to let them exercise that. But you have to let them exercise that within a boundary. Right? And so how that community manifested, I would have probably come in and changed that community dramatically. But that's not my actual job.
Yeah.
My job is to allow a community to manifest within a boundary. Right? So the same when Balance Grappling happens, the brick and mortar gym happens, then the coaching will be what it will be, right? But the underlying community that comes from that will be something that manifests naturally within a boundary. So the brand then will facilitate the gym and they'll complement each other, right?
Yeah.
There will still be the brand, there will still be a heavy push towards the product, but equally there'll be a gym, there'll be competitors, there'll be athletes, there'll be hobbyists, there'll be kids programs, there'll be everything you expect from a gym.
Seems like you have a really clear vision for your brand, right?
It's interesting because I've talked to 3 or 4 people that have marketing jobs that I've met through, you know, this is the thing, the weird thing about this stuff, right? And where I feel like I'm proving my own theory true, which is not very scientific, is it? But is that as I speak more about the brand, as I invest more of myself into the brand, people are seemingly naturally being attracted to it. So there's a guy at the morning class that I coach, and we're talking about the brand, whatever. And he was like, "Oh, if you want to have some conversations, like I run the marketing department for a pharmaceutical company." And I'm like, "How did I not fucking know that? I'd have come to you before." But like, he offers that time
When they understand like your...
I think it's more just they are attracted to the vision of the brand.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the way that I'm talking about it, but I'm not because I didn't know what he did. I'm not selling him the idea. I'm just talking to him at 6:05 in the morning. You know?
And that's the community-based aspect that you're saying, like that he's getting invested into the story almost, and you're building that.
Right. And that's as organically as I can have it.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I can't go around to 10,000 people
And do the same
and have
thing.
an individual conversation. Be like, "Sure, do you like the brand now?" Right. I think that would resolve into chaos very quickly. But like, having had the first conversation with him, he was like, "I see the thing,
Yeah.
but you can't describe it very well. I can see that it's in your head, but you're not doing a good job of describing it."
That's often a problem that lots of people have.
Right.
Even I have that quite a bit.
And I still have that problem today. Like,
Yeah.
if I was to show you the products, I'd be like, "This is what I mean." If I could show you what I wanted to do with the products, the back end of the products, what I want to do on the other side, like I explained the sponsorship, this, that, like that takes too long.
Yeah.
For Instagram, let's say, takes too long. Right? I need to be able to communicate that brand in a medium that hits within the first 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to fucking do that, lads. I'm trying to figure that out as we go. But
You said you're doing the adverts though, right?
yeah,
Possibly.
but like I don't know whether it's going to work.
Yeah.
Like I'm developing my idea for the advert to represent the brand in a way that feels authentic to me.
Yeah.
It may do 17 views.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who knows? Who knows? Don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Because my question was about the vision, and you just explained to me like you understand it, but how to communicate that to everyone else.
Right.
The same vision.
Right.
But I was going to also go on to ask about it's in your head. You understand it, right? At what point did you fully like understand the whole almost timeline of your brand? Because you know you're going to open this gym. Was that right from the start? Was it as you went along? Does that make sense?
So the gym idea came first.
Right.
And then...
So that was like the first, like you knew you wanted to do that.
Yeah, so I think... so when I was kickboxing, the coach at the time got me to sometimes, not always, but sometimes, would take some of the kids and I'd like run a little class in the corner. Right? And I remember enjoying it, but not really knowing what I was doing, really. Like I knew the techniques and stuff, but I didn't know how to explain them, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to coach. I didn't know how to teach.
Yeah.
Because I think teaching and coaching are different, and maybe we can do that afterwards. Write that down, Jamie.
Oh, right.
I enjoyed it, right? It was cool. I liked it. Then when I came to London and I started MMA stuff, the kickboxing coach at the time, his name was Pete, really lovely guy. He was a mad bastard, and he would go and do like ultra marathons in Africa, or he'd go
He's
and
that guy.
Do this,
the hardest
or do that.
geezer.
So like
the same guy.
Those things they take effort, they take prep, they take loads of whatever. And so he often would ask me to cover the class when he was away doing stuff. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it, whatever. And I really enjoyed it. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And then when I got to the grappling element, one of the coaches wanted to go back to Brazil to open a gym. And so there was a slot that was opening on a Wednesday, and the head coach was like, do you want it? And I was like, well, yeah, all right. Sure, I guess. And then...
So you're taking two people's coaching sessions?
So one was like very... what's the word I'm looking for? Was very irregular. Like if he was in the gym, he would coach.
Yeah.
If he wasn't, he'd text me and he'd be like, oh, I'm going to be away for 2 days. Is there any chance you could cover those classes? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Always for free, obviously. I didn't know how to ask for money. I didn't know any of that stuff, but that's, again, a topic for another day.
Sorry, how old were you when this was going on?
24, 25, something like that. Yeah, so I moved to London at like 21 or 22, something like that. And then... yeah, like I'll do a slight tangent for what was maybe the worst first class in history. Yeah. So my first grappling class, I had decided I was going to teach some leg locks. Right?
Oh.
In grappling, a leg lock is basically just one of the submissions that you can use, right? It's
it like when you like get the head round with your legs? Or?
It's basically when I put your leg in a position where I could cause damage to it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Now, I spent a week planning this class. I've got it all in my head. I know what I'm going to say. I know everything. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm ready to go. I turn up. Class is about to start. Fella in a wheelchair comes in with no legs.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, okay.
That is
what the hell did you do?
Right. So... then...
well, did they not know it was like a leg lock?
It wasn't a leg lock class though. It was just a grappling class.
Oh.
Right? And he came to the gym. He was an ex-army veteran.
Yeah.
He had got into... in combat, he had lost both of his legs. Obviously, had to be medically retired. But he came to the gym to just train, right?
Yeah.
Like he was just training, whatever. And so he rocks up. And he's like, oh, I'm going to do the class. And I'm like, oh, fuck. What do I do now?
It's almost like you can. There's almost two approaches I would personally take. Like I would just be completely authentic, or I would try to be adaptable and quick on my feet and think of something
I mean, the
else.
answer was I did both. Right?
Okay.
So at the start of the class, I was like, right,
I'm going to be absolutely honest.
I'm not going to name his name, but I went up to him personally before the class started, and I was like, mate, this is my first class, and this is what I've defined. And he just burst out laughing, and I was like, okay, all right, we're good. Okay.
I think that's pretty understanding. Like, it is your first class. So
Sure.
You cannot expect that.
Right. So I was like, what are you working on at the moment? And he said some things, and I was like, wicked, I can show you some stuff for that.
Okay.
Just let me teach the rest of the class, and I'll come over and we'll do a thing. So we did that.
Okay.
Fine. And then a fellow walks out of the changing room in a gi. It's a no gi class. Effectively, what that means is there are two different types of grappling. One is where you wear like a it's called a kimono. It's like a very thick jacket and some trousers. And then the rule set for that is you're allowed to use the clothes as part of part of your weaponry, right?
What? That's crazy.
And then there is something like an arm called nogi, which is wearing basically like a shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to use the clothes.
Yeah.
You have to just use your limbs and grips and these sorts of things. So it's a no-gi class, and a fella walks out of the changing room with a black belt on in a gi.
Okay.
And so he steps into the middle of the mat, and I go and say hello, and I'm like, just so you're aware, this is a no-gi class. And he just looks at me in my face and says, I know.
Oh.
And I said, well, fuck me then, I suppose. And I was like, okay, would you like to go and get changed? And he was like, no. I said, okay.
So did you have to teach him?
So I taught the class as normal.
Yeah.
With a fella with no legs and with a fella in a gi.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is insane. This is what?
Maybe it was the only clothes he had. Like he wasn't wearing. Like,
Oh, we'll get there. So he does the class. Everything's fine. Everyone does the class. Like the fella with no legs, he's grand. I've sorted all that out. Everything's good.
Yeah.
And then there was a Muay Thai class immediately afterwards.
Okay.
Right? The fella in the gi takes his gi off, right? Takes his gi pants off, and he's in a rash guard and shorts. Like, what the fuck? So anyway, that was the first coaching experience. Immediately after taking that class for a little while, I was like, I really like this. I really like this. I would like to do this more.
What did you like about it?
I don't know. I still don't know if I know the answer to that question. What I like is imparting knowledge, but more watching people progress. That to me is super rewarding. Super rewarding. Like, again, if I use the KCL example, the 2023-2024 year, like, you got some people that had never grappled ever before. And within 24 weeks or something, which is kind of all we have in the semester time, you see them go from having completely overwhelmed, completely just no idea what's going on, to having a semblance of understanding of the game and starting to manifest their own strategies and tactics to the game. Starting to see them go from, like, should I name? Like, I'll say the first name, not the second name. Like, we had a student called Alex, and when he first came, bearing in mind Alex is a big fella, right? He's a 6'2", 80 kilo, solid fella. And he came in and he was so nervous and so cautious and everything else, and you could feel that there was like embarrassment when he'd get something wrong and whatever. And to look at the difference of one, what the community that organically built in that room gave him and allowed him to become, even just in those 24 weeks, was astounding. And then his technical development in the sport as well was brilliant. It was really brilliant. And don't get me wrong, like, he's not a world champion or anything like that, but less than 1% of the world are, even 1% of the competitors. Like, if we have 100% of the people that grapple, 1% of them are professional athletes, and then an even smaller, minute element of that are world champions, right? So, you know, to see the gradient of progress, to me, is just incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And defining curriculums, defining teaching methods and coaching methods that allow you to connect with the human. Yeah. Because to me, that's what coaching is. Teaching, I could teach you how to edit this software. Yeah. Fine. But coaching you how to do it is, how can I get you to understand the value of doing so? And what do I need to say in order for you as a person to connect with that idea yourself?
That's really interesting. Like, especially the coaching element. I mean, this is just a really small example compared to what you've done, but you know,
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, like, I used to do like GCSE German mentoring, right? And it was like you were saying, looking back on it now, I really connected with the person and saw their progress, because they went from like, I'm trying to convert this, but like, I guess a B to an A.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it's that almost feeling of you've helped this person, you've impacted their life. I'd say, and I've really tried to make sure he understand, like you were saying, the value of what he's learning as well, and almost giving him a part of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd say that's more coaching than teaching. Would you agree?
Yeah, like the teaching element to me is you got him from a B to an A.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, it's good that happened, but you, in that moment, in that time of going from a B to an A, he may have fallen more in love with the language. He may have understood the cultural elements of the language. He could have understood your perception of the cultural elements, of some of the slang terms, of some of the this. Like, you know, when you're teaching him, you can be like, this is the sentence, this is the grammar, learn it. When you're coaching him, you could be like, oh, I really like this about it. Like, this is a weird nuance that happens in the language that doesn't happen in English. Or I really like that there's this level of humor that runs through the culture of the language, and this and that. Like, you're drawing in the human elements of what you are teaching, showing, producing, and that then builds your human connection with the other person.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the bit you loved, and that's the bit that part, that experience in that part of your life is going back to like the gym idea is really what fueled that kind of. Yeah, probably, but also like it's more fun than the job I do now. Yeah.
So, you know.
I've got a really interesting, and it's going to be a penultimate question because we're coming to the end of our podcast, because we just love talking to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like the whole experience of it, I guess grappling as a whole, but also the coaching elements, all these different elements, I think you've found your passion. Would you agree?
Don't know. We're going to find out.
Okay.
Like, I've been doing it in February will be 8 years, but I think that as much, and again, this is the balance thing, right? Like, I'm putting as much as I possibly can into grappling right now.
Yeah.
But let's say I become a parent.
It might change.
Life changes, bro. Life changes. And so it's the like, I can't remember exactly the philosopher that said it, but it's like, you don't worship false idols, right? You don't worship false gods. I think it was Kant, but maybe I'm wrong. It could be Nietzsche. I think it's Nietzsche. But like, I may think grappling is a passion, and then I have a kid.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't give a fuck about that thing anymore. I want to raise the kid now.
Yeah. What did you say again? False.
Don't worship false idols.
Don't worship false idols.
And it's like, don't attribute yourself to ideology, and don't define yourself, which is why I struggled with the question at the beginning. Right? Yeah. Because you like define yourself, and I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I'm just a dude, innit?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, yeah, I'm really invested in the grappling, my personal grappling, the brand, the gym, the coaching, etc. Super invested. Yeah. But I don't know.
Who knows where it might go?
Who knows? I don't feel like it's sensible to define myself by that one thing and be like, that is my
life, but
that is my maxim passion. Yeah. Maybe it's fucking not. I don't know.
Yeah, but you've got several things, like you mentioned a list that you're super interested in, and that's up right now.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and for like anyone watching who haven't found that yet, what would you say to them?
Try stuff. The end. Like, to me, like my wife, right? My wife is somebody that is incredibly creative. She is learning piano at the moment. Right? She's decided she likes piano. I'm like, all right, whatever, learn piano. And then it will be, she's learning to play the cello. Then she's drawing. Then she's painting. Then she's molding, sculpting clay. She's now knitting. She's, fabrics, this, that, the next. You fucking name it, right? She's trying stuff. And throughout her professional career, she's done so many different jobs trying to find the thing that she likes. And what she's found out that she's settled on is she's a florist. And she is sick, right? Some of the stuff she sends me, I don't know a fucking thing about flowers. Yeah. But she sends me and I'm like, that looks really cool. Yeah. Right? I'm not paying for it, but that looks really cool, right? And so that to her is a really nice balance of she gets to be creative.
Yeah.
Because it's an art form, right? And then there's also the corporate elements where you serve people, you speak to people, they come in and they're like, a guy comes in, I really want to buy something really beautiful for my wife or girlfriend or partner or whatever. And she's like, she has to talk to them to find out who they are and find out about who their partner is.
Yeah.
And then on the fly, she's like, cool, let me create the thing that this person's going to like. That is mental to me.
Yeah, like being able to mentally generate what looks nice.
Right, but looks nice for them. Not what looks nice in her eye, but what looks nice to them.
That's crazy.
Right? She is a gangster, yeah? So, but it took her a long time to get to that. It took her a long time, and she's dropped floristry. When I first met her, she was in it, then she was out, then she was in, then she was out. And it's been all this, and now she's gotten to a point where she's like, yeah, actually, I kind of like this. But she likes it now.
It doesn't mean that.
Who fucking knows?
Yeah, things can change.
You have to be willing to try stuff.
I'm just going to add to that answer. I think a good thing, tell me if you agree or not, but maybe a good thing to ask yourself is also, what do I like right now? Not what I'm going to like in the future, not what I want to like, but what I like doing right now. Like you're saying with your wife, just finding out the florist. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. So I have not lived a life that is of the same route that I've just explained. So on my 16th birthday, the day after my 16th birthday, my mother took me to the local town centre and made me go into every shop with a CV and get a job. Right? I got a job in Next, the clothes place, and I fucking hated it. But my mother needed money, and so I had to get a job. Fine. I then get a job in Burger King, which was by far the best job I've had. We can talk about that if you wish. And again, I needed money, so I got a job. I got an apprenticeship because I wasn't allowed in the police force because my eyesight's too bad. That's what I wanted to do originally. So I sat down with my mother and she was like, you need a real job. What are you going to do? Are you going to kickbox professionally? And I was like, I'm not good enough to do that. She was like, cool, what are you going to do? So we both came upon the idea that I'm kind of okay with computers. And so I pursued IT. I don't enjoy it. Like I've learned over my 13 years in the industry to enjoy it, but it's not what I would prefer to do. I've never done anything else. Right? From the age of 17 to now 31, 32 this year, that's been my life. And that has been my career. That has been the stability because I had to help provide for my family and now the family I have. So I haven't tried things. Right? But as a person that's been through the line of not trying things, I think the way to find your quote unquote passion is to try things. But there's a balance. There's a balance where sometimes you just got to fucking do something and get some money and help your family.
100% agree. And I can see what you've been saying about balance now through that example that you used through, like, you've got this career.
Yeah.
But then there's a balance of also doing stuff you like doing. Like in your case, everything you're doing with grappling, your brand and everything like that. Or your wife's case, the florist. But doesn't necessarily mean that has to be a career because it's quite difficult at a certain early age. Like you were saying, 16, 17, we're going out with your mum to find that straight away.
Right.
Sometimes about like trying stuff like you're saying. And
right.
sometimes that means going into a job like computing or something like that
right,
for
right.
stability and for providing for you.
And exactly. And I think like my aim, the reason why I would like to quote unquote retire my wife, and what I mean by that is if she wants to go and work in the floristry, she can do that. But she doesn't need it. She doesn't need to do it for money.
Yeah.
She does it for because she wants to, right? It's the same. If we're blessed enough to have children, then there'll be a balance to that, right? Where I would like them to find something that they're good at, or what they enjoy. But when they find that thing, they're gonna have to work fucking hard at it. The same way that Imi worked incredibly hard at floristry, and I worked incredibly hard in my early career and at portions throughout my career to be able to be in a position that I am now. Like,
That's a nice note to end the podcast on. And we could go on forever. Like we've written down so many questions as you're talking to, like link back to. We could talk about the Burger King. We could talk about so many different things. But thank you so much, Harry,
of course,
for coming on. And thank you for all of you listening as well.